Let's talk some sports, baby.
Taken by Iguodala. Iguodala to Curry. Back to Iguodala. Up for the layup. Oh, blocked by Jones.
And remember, make tomorrow better than today, and make today better than yesterday. And you know what we gonna do. We gonna holler at you until next time, baby.
Welcome to A Drink of Wisdom. With Jay Wise, I'm your host, Cody Ward. Thank you for spending some of your time with us tonight. And as a reminder to all our listeners, besides being on all your favorite podcast platforms, A Drink of Wisdom is also on YouTube, with each show segment available. Head on over, you like what you hear, we would appreciate your subscription. What's going on, Jay? Just you and me again. Drink is in the middle of a move, and he's had some snags, so he's out again tonight. But he is rejoining us shortly. I promised you last week. He'll be back soon, I promise.
Yes. Drink, we anticipate the one and only Drink will be back with us Friday. And I really hope I'm in a better mood then than I am now, based on the first story that we're going to get into. It is not it's not good. But we'll get into it. But in the meantime, it's the beard, it's the wisdom. Let's go.
Let's get right into it, man. In episode 85, the Bucks get beat again. Kuzma beats the buzzer, and we have a unique angle on the NBA awards. But, of course, we begin tonight in the world of college football with some pretty big news. The Big Ten and Pac-12 conferences have postponed fall sport activities, including football, and are looking towards the spring for a new target. These decisions were made final today by the conferences after a weekend of turmoil and rumors about the possibility thereof. These conferences joined some group of 5 conferences and high-profile players in opting out to play amid the pandemic. Meanwhile, the SEC and ACC have stood firm in their plans to play, while some teams from the canceled conferences have also been vocal about playing, such as Ohio State and Nebraska. For now, it appears that we have a very strange college football season, if any, on our hands. So, Jay, did the Big Ten and Pac-12 make the right call here? Should we have a season?
We should absolutely have a season. I'm looking at this is the developments that we've seen today, because it was today that the Big Ten and the Pac-12 came out and said that they're postponing. They're going to look towards the spring. Think about when we go back to Rudy Gobert testing positive. Think about the conference men's basketball tournaments that got shut down shortly thereafter. Everything was like a domino effect. One conference made a call, hey, we're shutting it down. And then very shortly after that, they all dropped like dominoes, all together. A lot of that, and you brought up a good point earlier, a lot of that had to do with some of the players weren't comfortable, some of the programs, some of the high-profile coaches. You talk about Duke, you talk about Kansas. They were among the blue blood programs that said, yeah, we're not feeling comfortable right now. And now some of that has gone in a little bit of reverse, as it seems. And not only that, we just got news very shortly ago, the ACC and SEC, their plans are unchanged. They expect to play.
A lot of questions. Real quick, that was reiterated after the Pac-12 and Big Ten news. So that wasn't just we haven't gotten word yet. They actually have adamantly reaffirmed their commitment to play.
Yes, they expect they are moving forward with their plans to play. Matter of fact, you had an ACC medical expert from Duke, I believe his name's Cameron Wolfe, who is a big reason why the ACC is moving forward. Dr. Cameron Wolfe, the Duke infectious disease specialist, says that doctors have learned enough over the past 6 months to manage the risk, and he believes that the season can take place safely. Now, what he did say, and communicating with the ACC commissioner John Swalver, he said, "Look, there is risk here. We cannot cut the risk all the way down to zero, but we believe the risk there, it's an acceptable level of risk, and this can be done safely." And it absolutely can be done safely. We take a look, and we have the great thing about football, professional football, and in the collegiate ranks. They are the last cog to fall into place among the major sports. Think about the NBA was hit immediately. They're back. The NBA's back in a bubble. It's going well. We haven't seen any positive tests. Baseball, They didn't go with a bubble. They've had some snags. They've had a couple outbreaks. But what we've seen, the Marlins and the Cardinals, as far as I can tell, and Derek Jeter, the Marlins, president, whatever role he holds, pretty high-profile role, he came out and said, hey, our guys, they weren't taking it seriously. They were being lackadaisical. They weren't mitigating properly. And the Cardinals, I believe there was some sort of big party or something that they engaged in. So we can see reasoning behind these outbreaks. If you don't mitigate, the risk increases. You got to mitigate. But even with that, think about this. All the other 28 teams really haven't had much of an issue. Now, there have been positive tests here and there, but there's been no outbreaks. So it can be done. Think about that. 28 out of 30 teams, 93% have done pretty well so far. Now we still have a long way to go, but to me it can be done. If those guys can do it, and you think about college football, how much time they have had, and I talked about the NFL last week. These leagues have had time to gather information, make good decisions, put good mechanisms in place, get your testing protocols together. I don't see any reason why it can't be done. I said this earlier. I think there's some political undertones here. At the administration level, I would say, I don't know this, but that's what I feel, and that's what I believe. But coaches and players, I think, for the most part, and not everyone, because we've seen, social justice initiatives. We know that has dominated headlines. After the coronavirus, that's been the next big thing that's going on. And we've got some things, particularly in the Pac-12, there was a big petition thing put together where, we got these demands or we ain't playing, all these different type of stuff. But we should have a season. We should have a season. And really the purist in me really thinks if the Big Ten and the Pac-12 said, hey, we want to wait until the spring to play. The football purist in me says, well, the rest of the conference, the rest of the Power Five, because that's what really matters here. The rest of the Power Five should back over and say, we'll follow suit. We will play in the spring, because that is really the only way you have a really legitimate season that won't have an asterisk, and you'll have a true national champion. Because you look at what we're about to embark upon right now. We talked about them. Ohio State, perennial national championship contender. And you think about other fringe teams in the Big Ten that we see in the top 25 consistently. You think about Michigan, Penn State, Wisconsin. Yep. And then the Pac-12, I'll be honest with you, I could care less about the Pac-12 because we know they're not serious. But I mean, we can't completely dismiss a team like Oregon. They appear to be back on the come up. So these are big losses as far as what we're looking for in terms of a playoff. We talk about those college football playoff rankings. Think about how weird it's going to be to have a playoff ranking show, and we're not going to be discussing where Ohio State falls, in the mix of things. That just seems ridiculous. And then that's a whole nother issue. Where does the college football – do we still have a playoff with just three Power Five conferences? Is that something the playoff will entertain? A lot of unanswered questions. And then another thing, and I think you're going to touch on this, and I hope you do. There are teams within the Big Ten, particularly, that want to play. You talk about Nebraska; they want to play. I believe Nebraska and Iowa were the only two teams in the Big Ten to vote and say, no, we want to play. We do not want to sit out. But Ohio State, I think they want to get their hands on this action as well. And why wouldn't they? I mean, this is a big deal. And I know it's just a game. It really is. But this is important to a lot of people. And we talked about this all the way up the entire period of the coronavirus pandemic. Sports is something that unites us. It's something that we lean on in tough times. Go back all the way to September 11th, 19 years ago. There was a brief pause in the action, but it didn't take very long at all to where the NFL was right back at it. I mean, it just comes down to there's always going to be some level of risk in everything, including this. And I guess the thing some people are waiting on is, I guess the decision has been made for some folks that we have to have a vaccine before we'll get back to business. And I don't know, I guess they're just hoping first of the year we'll have one, and then maybe it'll be an acceptable point where we can play, but there's no guarantees that that'll happen. So this is I'm disappointed. And I think it's pretty obvious that I'm disappointed. I think these folks should they should have made a better effort. Not to say that no effort was made, but we should be able to have a season. And I think I think these conferences have done a disservice to their student athletes. I really do.
Oh, this is really unfortunate. I mean, absolutely. College football is my favorite sport, and it's my favorite time of the year. You know, like when college football is coming on, like the year is changing. You're getting to the end of the year. You know, live in Florida, hurricane season's starting to wrap up. You know, I know those slightly more bearable temperatures are on their way. You know, you wake up with College Game Day, got this EBS, ABC or SEC on CBS music. Yeah, you know, I'm a Florida State fan and I love that, man. So that's my favorite time of the year, you know. And this what appears to be the first of a chain reaction of cancellations. Now, that news from the SEC and the ACC was a little surprising to hear, how they reaffirmed what they said. So maybe we have something different on our hands. You know, I think what's really interesting is you talked about the tournament, going back to where we had the NCAA tournament and how some conferences quickly shut things down and packed up their tents, and some made extra efforts to play. But what it really came down to was the players and the coaches said no, while the conferences were trying to say yes. Remember, the ACC was pretty infamous. They were like about ready to put people at gunpoint to get out there and play. And then when Duke packed it up and the rest of those other teams started doing it, they said, okay, well, no one's going to show up. I guess we're going to cancel this. And it was at the Big East, like, had a game and they canceled it at halftime. I mean, it was
the Big East was the last one to fold up, and rightfully so, because they ain't playing no football.
So we're basketball, so a big deal to the conference, and they try everything they could. But see, this time your power structure's flipped a little bit. You have conferences saying no, like the Big Ten and the Pac-12, namely, but then teams within the conference, like especially Nebraska, has been they're really mad about this. But also some of your blue bloods like Ohio State, like Michigan. I know John Harbaugh said a lot about playing. And even conferences that don't have it canceled yet, like Alabama, Nick Saban's had comments about it. So the dynamic has shifted a little bit away from the conferences and more to the teams, coaches, and players. Trevor Lawrence this week started the whole We Want to Play initiative, where it's kind of like players are trying to unionize a little bit, but it was marked by Justin Fields and some other really big name, you know, top picks that are going to come up in next year's draft and some of the biggest voices of the sport right now. So it creates this interesting dynamic, because can Ohio State really say, no, we're going to play and go to another conference? Are they even allowed to do that? Like, can they make up their own schedules? Can we have some weird, like, power 3 for the year where we just break you up into geographical divisions and you just play whoever's close to you? Like part of me thinks that's so cool. What if Florida State and Florida and LSU were all in the same division and we all played each other, and then we played the champion from the Midwest, and, you know, like, that sounds so cool. But at the same time, you have to think, yeah, but we're missing 2 conferences. How good is this going to be? I mean, I don't know. Like you said, you take Oregon and Michigan and Ohio State and put them in, we're not really missing too many other teams that are going to be contenders. But hey, but, you know, when you zoom out a little bit, you look at the whole thing. One of the big problems is there's really no good answer to this, right? There's no true answer. You can't reaffirm 100% that it's so dangerous no one can play, nor can you reaffirm that it's so safe that there's no risk of catching it. Like you said, the risk cannot be 0. But if you think about it, that's true for life in general, and in a sport like football, where there's a lot of injuries and a lot of potential for serious injuries.
Absolutely.
Every year, players have careers ended in football. It happens. It is an inherently dangerous sport. Now, it's not to say that coronavirus doesn't present its own risk and its own issues, but you're already playing a dangerous sport. We're not playing tiddlywinks out here. So I don't understand, exactly, because when you talk about it from a societal standpoint, are we just going to be SpongeBob in the episode where he sits in his house with a penny in the napkin and he doesn't leave his house for any reason? Like, you know, how far do you take it? Because we're seeing some aspects of society, not just in sports, where we're seeing increase in suicides and people avoiding hospitals for treatment. And the virus is having these second and third order effects that are starting to potentially outweigh the dangers of the virus itself. As we see more people recovering, less people having symptoms, less people having serious complications from it. We have to ask, is the same thing true for football? Is canceling the season really the best call for the athletes? Because we know a lot of these guys, and this was highlighted by guys like Trevor Lawrence and Nick Saban, they both mentioned the fact that, hey, some of these players may go home and not have great situations. One, they weren't planning on being home in the fall. They were planning on being on campus, so they don't have any. They may not have arrangements made for housing and employment and money and everything else. And for some guys, it can be so bad as not having food on the table. You may be going to high transmission areas where, like Dick Saban said, hey, you got a 1 or 2% chance of catching it here. You may have 5 or 8 or 10% going home, especially live in a big city, you live in a hot spot. So we can at least control some aspects here. So why wouldn't we want to try to do that for these athletes and keep them a little bit better secure than they would be at home just running all around on their own? But on the flip side of the coin, we also have to remember that COVID isn't always just I got a cough and now I feel better. There have been examples of players with long-term effects. Houston's Cedric Williams, he's battling heart problems right now in relation to COVID and the complications weeks thereafter. So, when you're a conference, you're making all these decisions. You have to weigh everything together. But I think right now these conferences are really wanting to err on the side of caution. But I wonder if maybe it's too much in the caution department. So we're going to see. This is going to be really, really interesting to see if the ACC and the SEC are going to dig in and they're going to really fight this battle. And if they do, what kind of season could we have? It's going to be – I think by Friday we'll know more. I think for sure if they've dug in by the end of the week, maybe we're having a season. We'll see.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. Also be interesting to see where the Big 12 falls in this. I know you got some inclinations that they may align themselves with the ACC.
That's what I feel like.
The SEC and play. And not to say I think it is a big deal if we get 3 playing and 2 not playing as opposed to the other way around.
Mm-hmm.
But this is strange, man. This is strange, and it's not going to be the same without some of those big high-profile programs that the Big Ten in particular puts out there, because the Big Ten is the second best conference in college football. So not having those programs available, and it's right that then that's why I said a lot of unanswered questions here, because how much control does the Big Ten have over the individual institutions? Can some of these teams that want to play just pick up and roll out, and the other conferences like, hey, yeah, we'll take you in, we'll take this school in to make it somewhat equitable. There's a lot of things we don't know, and I would imagine we'll be revisiting this very soon.
Oh, definitely. And the final thing I also added is the ramifications of scholarships, how this affects eligibility, money, not only with the programs, but a lot of these cities around college campuses take, again, Nebraska, Lincoln, Nebraska, for example, they make most of their money off Nebraska home games. So there's going to be a lot of pushback, not just from the teams, but from a lot of sources outside of college football that depend on this for their livelihood. It's got to get really interesting, so we'll see.